Krish Ramanathan. Krish Ramanathan is with us, and he's the Director of Business Process Reengineering and Lean Six Sigma at Jabil. For 7 years, working in the area of process improvement within finance and legal. He's currently leading business process reengineering in global materials and driving business process management across the company. His expertise in transactional processes has served him well in his current role leading the business architecture of Jabil. Jabil has been with us before. Some of you know Mihal and others from Jabil who have presented to us. They have done a wonderful job with process ownership, with business process definition across the organization. But for sure, it's a long, arduous journey that requires great leaders like Krish to make it work. Krish, thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and expertise with our global audience today.
Thank you. Okay. So thank you all for having me here. My name is Krish Ramanathan, and I've been with Jabil for 7 years, and I lead the Ibpm, and I will talk about what Ibpm is today. So to begin with, the acronym Ibpm stands for Integrated Blueprint Management, and that's what Ibpm stands for. What we're going to walk you through is introduction to Jabil, who we are, our locations, and our strategy, because everything comes from the strategy and how we operate to the operating system. I'll talk about the Ibpm journey. What is Ibpm for Jabil? Talk about the architecture, an important concept around ownership, performance tracking and a deployment, the overall roadmap, and our partnership with Signavio, the tool that we use, where we house all our process baselines. So who is Jabil? And as you know, here's a snapshot with few key numbers. Jabil as a company, what's our vision? To be the most technologically advanced and trusted manufacturing solution provider. That's a tall order. We want to be best in class when it comes to providing world-class solutions for our customers. We have been in existence for 53 years, going all the way back to 1965 onwards. Our revenue to date is 25 billion. We have a wonderful network of employees, 250,000 plus. We operate globally around 120 sites and adding more to that. We operate in 27 countries. Our total manufacturing space is around 42 million square foot. We have a huge network of suppliers. They are our backbone. We have about 27,000 strategic suppliers. And the brands that we deal with, there is around 330 plus. As you can see, it's a global company. It's a huge network of employees. And the markets that we serve, we go all the way from consumer to packaging, printing, energy sector, smart home, retail, healthcare, automotive, defense, and capital equipment. So we basically touch all the critical segments of the markets where we help our customers achieve their goals. Our reach in Jabil, typically, going back about 20 years ago, Jabil started as a contract manufacturing company, but we have evolved since then. We innovate with our customers. We get on the table with our customers right at the point of idea generation to design. We develop new product introductions. We have manufacturing, mass production, fulfillment, and aftermarket services as well. Our approach has always been empowering, our experts. We have so many experts within various areas of business. We pride ourselves in innovation and, more importantly, accelerated innovation. Engineering excellence, that's again one of our core. Manufacturing agility, it's so important, especially in the time of year where we have supply chain issues, or where, with so many disruptions happening, still we try to deliver and meet all our customer demands. Supply chain has been the heart of our organization. We pride ourselves in complex supply chain orchestration. And what really makes Jabil different is our operational excellence, how we approach operational excellence at our site level. I'll talk a bit about that. Our integrity and ingenuity combined with innovation, deep technical expertise. As I said, we have huge SME expertise where we can leverage a lot of technology. Supply chain intelligence, that's one of our core capabilities that helps us to understand the complex supply chain that we deal with. Work cell model that you see at the bottom is an important concept, and I'll touch upon that during the presentation. So where are we as a company? As you know, we are all across the globe, in Asia, across in China, and in Taiwan, as well as coming to Europe. We are all across the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, North America as well. A lot of our sites are our global facility, our global headquarters is in St. Petersburg. That's where I'm talking to you from today, wonderful Florida. So it all starts with a strategy. So as you can see from here, I have a graph that shows time and complexity. So our complexity today, when it comes to the markets that we serve, the vastness of the various products that we produce adds every day to the complexity. And that shows itself in our processes as well. Where I would like to see a complexity curve should be in a future state somewhere over here. So there's a huge opportunity to leverage to minimize the complexity. So what I mean by leverage is we have so many segments within Jabil. We have so many pockets of innovation. We have expertise, and we need to leverage to scale to bring that complexity down. So when you look at our manufacturing costs over here as a percentage of real revenue, there's a huge opportunity to reduce our manufacturing cost. And again, how are we going to do that is making use of a leverage and economies of scale. So as you can see, we are in the journey, and this is where IBPM is a critical enabler to how do we leverage scale and how do we utilize all our capital equipment to its full capacity. How do we eliminate waste in our processes? And it all starts with the IBPM journey that I'm going to talk about. So what's the core around integrating IBPM to a strategy? So I would think about this as a three-step process. First, we want to standardize and maintain that sustainable operational excellence. Now, this is a tall order given our global footprint, given our sites across and the various customer segments we deal with. How do we standardize? And we don't want to over standardize. We also want to give a level of flexibility, but at the same time, we want to standardize as much as we can. Once we have that standardized platform, then we can think about innovation and transformation that happens. And finally, we want to be very adept at new business models. We want to meet, our customer expectations, and the transformation needs to happen quickly. So when we were on the journey of IBPM about 2.5 years ago, some of the use cases you can think about are, again, opportunity to reduce waste. Lean is an integral part of IBPM. Standardizing processes. All our sites, have standard processes, but again, how do you connect those standard processes so that they have a coherent process across all our sites? If I walk into a site in UC versus if I walk into a site in Guadalajara, am I looking at the same standard process? And are they following the same standard process? Again, another use case for IBPM would be to reduce days in inventory and SG&A cost. Thinking about investment decisions, like we just went through an S4 implementation, and IBPM is a blueprint that showcases all our core processes, and that was a critical input into our S4 implementation. When we talk about M&A, we want to quickly map the target processes to Jabil. We want to identify opportunities where they are different, and we can enhance that integration. For me, the last point is very critical. The business models change. 20 years ago, how we did business is so different today, and it's changing every quarter. Or we may need to think about the new business models that's going to come through our doors, and we need to be adept, agile, and we need to have our IBPM operating model very agile and changing to our business models as well. Talking about strategy, again, this is our core where we do our site management. We do have our systems called Jabil Operating Systems, our LPAs. This is our day-to-day management of site. This is the bread and butter, how our sites operate. Then we do have our regional management support, and there is a top-down approach to our regional management, how they interact with the site management. And then we do have global support and how our global SMEs interact with the regional SMEs, and how global projects get down cascaded to the site level. So where IBPM plays a critical role is aligning the global, regional, and site so we all march in the same direction. Again, we have unified metrics where we monitor our performance, whether it be global, regional, or site. But I think the space where IBPM plays a critical role is really that communication, alignment on the strategy, whether it be from global to the site to the person who's working on the line. Are they very clear on the global strategy and the strategy for the company? Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the IBPM journey, and as I said, it's a journey. We are still in the process. It's always a continuum, and we've gone a long way, and I hope to share that experience with you. So the best way I could think about, how we are positioning IBPM within Jabil. This is my go-to slide if I have to talk to someone who says, "Can you explain to me IBPM quickly in 10 seconds or 20 seconds?" Is think about, our GPS systems. You put in your address, it takes you directly. There's a lot of algorithm that works behind the scene, optimization of route. If there's traffic, it alerts you to reroute to a different place. But you as a user just follow the screen and it takes you seamlessly to your destination. Think about IBPM in a similar way. That's how we view it. We are looking at whether it be our SMEs at the line, or whether it be a regional SME, or whether it is our executives trying to understand how our operating model is. We are looking at IBPM to be that behind the scene engine that seamlessly connects process, people, technology, and as a user just directs them and guides them at point of reference or when they need advice and guidance. So our IBPM has about 5 pillars. Call it the house of IBPM. And I'll start off with what is our integrated blueprint. So everything starts with a framework, and I'm going to talk about the process framework that we follow and how we look at the company through a business architecture. And an example of an end-to-end could be plan to ship, quote to cash is another example. Source to order could be another end-to-end. So we have looked at that framework to look at what are the core critical processes that makes money for Jabil, and what are the supporting important end-to-end processes that enable the core processes. So it took us a long journey of 2.5 years to get that blueprint. And it's tied again to our site level operating procedures, to our global procedures. Now, IBPM by itself, just having the blueprint won't be successful. We need to define the roles and accountabilities. So we have some important roles, such as global process owner, GPO, we call that. A GPO, you can think about in industry terminology like a value stream leader. So a global process owner is accountable and responsible for an end-to-end process, and they align closely with the SME network, which I will be talking about more in detail. We do have IBPM process champions, and they are really the ambassadors in the respective regions to take the concept of IBPM and working with the global team to cascade that communication and information down to the site level. The governance is important, where we talk about forums, GPO forums, SME forums, the interaction of global forums with the various GPOs in their respective functions, and common collaborating platform. How do we come up with the best processes, right? Best, in my view, in my experience, is ask the people who do the work, and they would be able to come up with the best baseline process. But how do we do that? Because we have 260,000 plus employees, and how do we collaborate? This is where Signavio comes into play. Jabil has been partnering with Signavio to help us. It's a cloud-based platform. It's an excellent tool for collaborating and creating those process baselines. The last one, of course, is process performance measures. How do you know your process baseline that you established is best in class? What is the KPIs, and how do you measure those? How is data being generated at each of the steps within a process? How are they connected? And at the end of the day, how do you know if your process is performing as per the baseline? Right. So all of these 5 are equally important. If one of them fails, the house crumbles. So we constantly go back to this concept of the house of IBPM and try to bring the importance of the 5 pillars. The critical components when you talk about standardizing, and this is very important, it starts off with the process at the top. Again, this one of the learnings that we gathered in our IBPM is when we start drawing our baseline process, different sites across different regions that we operate, they all have their best practices. But how do we come up with a common best practice and call it a standard? And this is a very iterative process. Again, the key is an agreement to a common baseline. So that is an important step in defining the process. Now, the process is linked to our standard operating procedures, like global procedures. You can't obviously go to the nth degree of defining a process baseline. Some of those details are linked in our standard operating procedures that must be followed, such as safety, EHS, and so forth. Then we talk about tools. For me, tools are the applications, softwares, equipments that are connected. So how do we link all these standard applications, standard equipments to a process baseline? And we have done that through Signavio. And the last two, of course, you need data. So we need to understand the data governance. We need to understand how the data are connected between the various end-to-end processes, at what process step, what critical data is being captured, and mapping that data architecture is important for us to understand what the KPIs are. More often, this is the area where it could get quite complex because there's so much of data, and how do you know what is the right data you're looking for and what is the right data to focus on so that you get the right KPIs, and by having the right KPIs, if your process is performing as per the standards. So again, these are just 5 critical components when we talk about a process baseline or creating a baseline process. Just to get a bit into what I meant by the business architecture, at the end of the day, we are looking at Jabil through 13 core business processes, and all of that has are linked together. So there's a method to the madness over here. So quickly going over the concept, we talk about a process framework and we go through various levels. So level 0 is a governing policy. So this would be like at the top of the policy for the company, and that governs a lot of the standard operating procedures. Level 1 would be a process category. An example would be plan to ship. And level 2 would be the process group. So what are the core process groups within plan to ship? And we have outlined that and established that. Now, level 3 is where we talk about a Swimlane diagram, and all of this, by the way, is done in Signavia, the tool that we use. This is where we establish the baseline processes, right? So this is a very time-consuming process where it could get, sometimes complex with sub-processes, but we are trying to define what that end-to-end process looks like. This is the place where we connect the application layer to the process layer and the data layer to the process layer. And we also connect our documentation to the process layer. So a good process baseline is a combination of your global procedures, your process flows. Obviously, when you talk about a swim lane, you do have accountabilities of functions or people or role that perform the task, the standard applications that is being used at each of the activity level, and what is the input and output for each of those boxes within those process flows. So again, an extensive amount of work goes at the level 3. Level 4, really think about it as each of the boxes within the process flow. We call it the activity of deliverables, and that's your level 4. Now, in Jabil, we have an additional level called level 5, and these are very unique activities. So what do I mean by unique activities? For example, automotive can have extra steps or extra regulatory requirements that we need to capture, or it could be customer specific, that we need additional steps to our standard process flow, which is important, must be done, and those would be captured at the level 5. And they might be residing at the site level or at the work cell level where that product is being manufactured. Again, as I said, Jabil being a global company, how do we track performance? Here's an example we did 2 years ago, and on the deployment of our basic process baselines. We have, at that point in time, we were focusing on EMS. Jabil has got various segments, EMS, JGP, and JRI. At the point in time, we are focusing on EMS segment, and they are further broken down by the 5 regions. And just to give you a snapshot, we are able to identify how many processes they agree to standard, what are the variations, why are there variations, and we need to address those variations so that they can conform to the standard. So it kind of gives you a quick summary of our performance tracking, which region is behind, which region is ahead, and how we can, at a global level, try to work on the areas where that needs more improvement. Our journey, again, it started with the ideation in 2019, and then as more important is we wanted crawl, walk, and run. So we are at the point where I think we have started to run, but I just wanted to help understand our journey way back from 2019. Um, we defined a manufacturing cost. What are the manufacturing costs we need to improve? And our bread and butter is manufacturing. So the more we define an improvement or reduce the manufacturing cost, that would be a direct benefit to the P&L. We believe strongly in do, learn, change, because we are learning. We started on this journey. We may get it right the first time. Sometimes it's okay to make mistakes, but we learn from that and we change our approach. We defined the platform and the process control. That's when we had the partnership with Signavio. We build the Ibpm user network. For us, this is very important because Ibpm by no means is a corporate, a top-down approach. Yes, the strategy is being defined by the company, but the success of Ibpm really is the user network, the SME network. And we have to leverage that economy of scale to really propagate Ibpm throughout our organization. And we established Ibpm champions. Um, the 5 regions that you saw in the previous slide, we have an Ibpm champion for each of the regions, and their role is really to take the concept of Ibpm and cascade it down to the site level, to the work cell level. In 2020, this is where we started working and gathering speed on the process validations, meaning that we started working with a few functions. For example, we started with materials, then we had an approach to get to our engineering functions and so forth. We started building our capabilities during the deployment process. We also closely collaborate, work with the lean community, because it is part of the PDCA cycle. And empowering SME, this is a big point for us, is we realize that if Ibpm needs to be successful, the SMEs need to own this, right? Because they are the people who would take they are the end users of Ibpm. So we need to empower the SMEs at the site level. And even today, 2.5 years, I still talk about Ibpm every day. There's always a supervisor, or there's always a person in the line who still hasn't heard about Ibpm, either because they're new to Jabil or they changed their roles. So it's always a constant communication, talking about a strategy, talking about Ibpm, and building that awareness. Our WCM is our work cell managers, OM is our operations managers. So again, how do we get the communication right from the global level all the way to our work cell and our operations managers? Because they are the end users, and if they don't understand, this whole house of Ibpm fails. Now talking about 2022, I believe we are at a point where we focus so much on operations. We are having conversations about the process model framework into other areas such as finance, HR, legal, and other areas that support it. EHS, facilities, to name a few, right? And we continue to go on the journey of creating the strong process knowledge at each region. We are thinking about, the network, SME network, being the super SMEs who would train other SMEs in their region on Ibpm and how it's going to help them at the region level, at the site level. So it's one to few, few to many, train the trainer model. And the self-assessment process readiness is important for us, because at the end of the day, it's great to have your process baseline established and sitting in Signavio, but how do we really take it and apply it at the execution level? This is where we have self-assessments, where we have audits done by the SMEs, people who actually do the work, like a material SME would do a self-assessment on their process. And trying to see how good they are to the baselines. Now, if I've been very purposeful, and at this point, I'm going to talk about the digitalization value chain, because for me, in IBPM, you need to get the foundation right. This is the foundation on which you can now build the digital platform. I've talked about how we are connecting data to the process. So the foundation is what IBPM is providing, upon which, once we have that solidified, then we're talking about digitization, connecting ecosystems, AI, and so forth. Talking about, again, our journey, this would be a typical approach that we apply over and over again as we incorporate IBPM in new areas. So we start off with stakeholder engagement and change management. And as you can see, our sponsorship is very important, and we have that belief that they drive it down from top down, engaging with the GPOs. Then we talk about the IBPM framework. We started with plan to ship as an example, where we align on a business architecture. We digitize the plan to ship. We create a playbook, and then we define the roles and responsibilities. So having a digitalized playbook is good, but again, without the roles and accountability defined, none of this is going to happen. We need to have a solid train the trainer model. We need to establish the forums so that there's innovations and actions can bubble up and change or affect the baselines. Collaboration is super important, and at the end of the we close the loop with process performance. This just shows you a screenshot of Signavio, how we use, this is our navigation map. This would be, a level 2, a level 3 drill down capability. And I talked about the GPS. This would be a GPS all in Signavio, where anybody can go into the organization and look at the process baselines based on the drill down. I'm right at the top of the time here, so thank you for your time, and we'll open up for questions. Jose, I think I'm done with my presentation and content.
Terrific presentation, Krish. What you and Jabil have been doing for some time now is a great standard for intelligent business process management implementation, which you make sound and look incredibly easy, but it's one of the hardest things that any organization will engage on to do it well. And you have done it very well for quite a bit of time. And I'll ask the audience to keep providing your questions. I can see them coming in. Lots of great comments here for your presentation, and thank you for your presentation. I'll ask you a question. Well, first of all, this conference is about digital transformation, and I love the fact that you talked about business transformation, because there is no digital transformation without a fundamental business and business process transformation. And then that brings me to the next level, which is there's no business transformation without cultural transformation. So my question to you is, what are the aspects on Jabil's culture, and openly speaking, that may have helped or hurt this transformation, and that you may still be working on? So tell me a little bit about the cultural aspects of your transformation, and things that were helpful because the culture already was aligned with your transformation, and sometimes not so helpful. You have to work on some cultural elements.
So it's interesting because Jabil went through cycles of cultural transformation. To begin with, when I joined Jabil 7 years ago, it was the mentality of entrepreneurship. Each of the segments were entrepreneurs. They were given the freedom to go and get things done for the customers. So what happened when I joined Jabil in 2015, at the point was, it's great. Business was growing, Jabil was growing. At that point, it seemed the right thing to do. And entrepreneurship, what comes with entrepreneurship is I create my own process, I create my own tools. I don't collaborate too much because I don't have time for collaboration. And I'm running, and I've got the entrepreneurship mentality. So I'm going to go and create what it requires for our customers. Now, again, talk about it, 7-year journey. Now we are looking at a manufacturing cost going up. Why? Because we allowed that entrepreneurship mentality, and now we have, again, duplication of processes, duplication of capabilities. And this is where we said, okay, now we have to rethink because we have grown too big. Now, how do we address our manufacturing cost? How do we leverage economy of scale? So now I won't use the word centralization because that's not what we're thinking about, but how do we leverage our capabilities? And this is the birth of IBPM, right? So culturally, we went with entrepreneurial mentality, which is good. It gives speed, it gives that agility. But as you go through that curve, and if you don't really look at the operating model, at some point you may have a huge manufacturing cost increase. That's your inflex point where you need to rethink and say, okay, we still need a fine balance of entrepreneurial mentality, but also fine balance of leverage of scale, and how do we support that? And I think that's what IBPM is doing.
I love that discussion. Of course, I'm heavily biased by that discussion because, as you know, the name of my company is Global Excellence and Innovation. But the forces of excellence and the forces of innovation, they pull in very different directions. And you have just talked about that. That entrepreneurship, pulls in one direction, and then in the other direction, you have the need for economies of scale and real excellence, if you will, that pulls in a different direction. And I think what you demonstrate here is that it's neither one nor the other. It's the intelligent blending of the two, because you do not want to squash the entrepreneurial spirit that made this company so successful. Yet at the same time, there is so much waste that happens if you just keep doing that without applying excellence to it.
Right.
So what we have seen is that the great enduring organizations are neither the most operation excellent or the most innovative. They are the ones who have a level of excellence. They are very innovative and entrepreneurial, but they apply the principles of excellence to scale the innovations that they create. And you are doing a wonderful example of that. That in my view positions Jabil. If you're able to manage that friction between excellence and innovation in the years ahead, and you don't pull too far in either direction, I think that you are in a great path towards success. So this is a really great story on that. Now, Cameron Jahanshahi, I got his last name right, saying thanks for a great presentation, impressive journey, he says. And can you talk more about the IBPM user network? How did you select, engage, and train, sustain, reward them? How do you keep this folks on the IBPM user network engaged? Any lessons there that you can share?
So again, that's one of the challenges, right? It's a continuum. Our SME network is, as I said, bread and butter for Jabil. So right away, when we started on the journey of IBPM, we engaged our SME network quickly. We brought them up to speed on why this is. Look, it's part of change management as well. We need to help them understand this IBPM is not just a strategy and it's sitting there, but it's really a bread and butter that's going to help you at your site level to get better. You're going to now have a central location where you're going to find your baseline processes. You're going to know that collaboration is happening across. So best practice that's happening in one site, you would be able to see that. Before that wasn't the case. So the SME network, we are constantly evolving it. I talked about the forum, right? The forums are really important, where we have the site forum that leads into a regional forum that leads into a global forum. And then you have the global process owner or value stream leader that sits through all these forums, because we are talking about his or her process. How do we reward people? I think the rewarding of people happens at the site level. Jabil has got a great system of respect, recognize people. So we do have part of our annual Deliver Best Practice competition. Obviously, for the last 2 years, we couldn't meet in St. Pete, where we bring in all these. It's a huge process where we look at the best-in-class process improvements, and we take the top 15, 20, and then they come in over here to the headquarters and present it, and there's a prize money for it, and that's a lot of pride. You have teams coming all over from the world. It's one of the best 5 days. I'd love to come to work because you would love to see all of that innovation happening across the sites. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that in person over the last 2 years, but that's a big part of IBPM as well, is how do we bring in and recognize all these deliver best practices and reward them. So, when we open it up every year, we have thousands of entries into best practice, whether it be in operations, finance, or HR. We have various categories. And again, those are some of the critical things that enables IBPM.
That's outstanding, Krish. Now, the next question that I have here has to do with collaboration. One of the things that we have identified on the best transformations is that the organizations develop the capabilities and the competencies of what we call collaborative leadership, the ability to collaborate towards a common purpose, surround yourself with people with different perspectives who are willing to voice those different perspectives without fear of retaliation, but collaborating effectively towards a common purpose. By the way, that sounds really awesome, but it's very hard to do because, and specifically when it comes to identify the standardized processes and best practices, because my professional experience is that you get subject matter experts around the table and they are discussing, some process that they do different around the world. Very quickly, in 5 minutes, they'll say, oh yeah, we would benefit from having a standardized process. They'll say that. But at the same time, each one of them is thinking on their head, we're going to standardize it and it's going to be my way. And then the effort of collaborative leadership is really to find out what is the best way for the organization as a whole, and can we compromise on our local optimizations for the benefit of the whole. And that's not an easy discussion. It requires collaborative leadership. So tell me a little bit about how do you go from, yeah, we're going to standardize something, to collaborating on what that standard and potential best practice will be.
This is one of the biggest challenges, I would say right up. So we have been very clear about a definition of baseline. Believe it or not, just the word baseline, people have different ideas of what a baseline is. If I go and ask my organization, hey, what do you think about baseline? What's your idea of baseline? Even today, I'll get different answers. So we clarified what a baseline is. A baseline is a standard set of practice agreed to, right? Keeping in mind safety, quality, doing it right the first time. Agreed to is underlined bold. And again, this was, when we created a process baseline, it wasn't easy because people are passionate about, they believe their process is best. So when I bring in LATAM region and I bring in Europe region and all these regional leads and say, okay, guys, we need to work on this process baseline. It's not easy because everybody has got their best way of doing things. So how do we as a leader align on it? Again, going back to the principle, is that the most optimum way? If there's, let's try, and it's no way possible to get a process baseline 100%. Let's try to agree on 60, 70%. Yes, let's get 70. Typically 80 would be nice. I would, go with 65, 70%. Let's get that figured out. The remaining, yes, there's a bit of variation because it's regulatory sometimes in Europe versus LATAM. It could be customer specific, it could be market specific. But okay, at least we agree on 75% of your process baseline. That's a good start. And then slowly when they start making it the way of life, then they would say, you know what, there's more opportunity to 75 to become 85. So we are in a, we are not saying right away, bam, 100% we're going to get standard. And that's not possible. We take what's the best, we push for what's the best. I would take 65, 75% or 70% as a starting point. And it's a journey. So we are going to go from 70% slowly, addressing those variations, go to 80, go to 85%. But it's a huge jump, from silo to a 75 to 80% standardization. So it takes a lot of time and effort, but it's worth the time and effort.
Well said, Krish. What a wonderful view of intelligent business process management on your digital transformation journey. In benchmarking cross-industry organizations on digital transformation, what Jabil is doing is truly world class. So congratulations to you and to the team for the being chronically consistent with your purpose, and because that's the ultimate measurement and of discipline, and you have shown that very, very well. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise for our global audience today.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Krish Ramanathan, leader of intelligent, let me turn my camera back on, digital transformation, intelligent business process management at Jabil, sharing their wonderful journey and a very, very well thought out strategic journey of digital business and cultural transformation. We are going to be taking a break here, and when we come back, we're going to bring you two other wonderful cross-industry global experts of digital transformation. I'm talking about Jim DeVries and Hosni Adra, who are going to be discussing with us the unleashing of digital twins to optimally empower the workplace. So I'll see you back at the top of the hour with Jim and Hosni.